Have you heard about this personal and professional podcast?
Coaching in Session
with your host, Michael Rearden.
Today, we're going to have a fun conversation. We're going to be talking about your work, energy, and healing, some of my favorite conversations to have, because when it comes to the human mind and body, many of us forego the energy aspect. We just kind of think we're beings and we just have our own life, and we forget about the body, mind, and soul, and the energy, and all the aspects that truly make us who we are. And so I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. If you could, can you tell the world who you are, what you do, and how you help?
I love your message already that you're putting out there because it speaks right to my soul. So as you said, Michael, I'm Tara Wiskow. I have been a weight loss coach for over 11 years, which started at the base of me losing 220 pounds naturally. And I naturally moved into that. Lost my sister in 2023. She's my baby sister to cancer, and that opened me up intuitively. And so today, as I'm here with you, still a weight loss coach, I am an intuitive healer and life reinvention expert, working with women, helping them to find their voice, move into their authenticity, and live the exact life that they desire to live, no longer blocked by what has energetically blocked them for so many years.
You have a lot there, right? You started off with a huge weight loss journey, losing a loved one, and it is going to have some effect on the mind, whether the positive effect of losing the weight, you look in the mirror and you say, whoa, look at this person, right? I didn't know this person was here. And then, going into the hardship aspect, right? It's almost two different sides of the coin. Grief is very difficult, and both require energy and focus, because people who are intentional about losing weight, they are saying, well, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to go for the walks. I'm going to get rid of some bad habits and some disciplines. On the grief side, we might fall into the static or, the stuckness of not taking action because we feel as if, we can't move, or the world is so heavy. When we look at that in an energy sense, from the good and the bad side, of course, how can one person understand their energy at a given moment in time? Because, as I said, you can be full of energy, losing the weight and looking yourself in the mirror. This is good energy. And then you have, maybe a bad or negative energy in the sense of grief or loss or a loneliness. So, helping us navigate through those good and bad energies.
That's a great question. Most times we have no idea, like you alluded to at the beginning of our conversation, is that we're not even aware that we are energy, that we are a frequency, that we operate at low, mid-level, high frequencies. And when we're in that low-level frequency, that's where our fear, our sadness, our doubt is overtaking us. So just naturally knowing that, allowing this to be a marker of knowledge of when I'm sad, or if I'm fear-based, or if I'm in that trauma space, I'm naturally in that low level of frequency or energy to begin with. And as we raise our elevation of emotions and feelings, get to that top high frequency of love and abundance and joy and peace and excitement, that brings us to that high energy vibration and frequency. And that allows us to be in that higher state of being. I also talk about it in PD consciousness. PD consciousness is very much life happens to me. Everything's out to get me. No good comes my way. Versus 4D consciousness is very much, again, high frequency, abundance, love, joy. Everything's always working out for me. And so being aware, I always say there are 3 things to any change in your life. Number 1, become aware of it. That is how we start the cycle of change. Number 2, admit that you've got something that needs to change. Because you can be aware all day long until you admit that this is something that needs to change and that it's internally within you, that it's your doing, nothing changes. And then number 3 is taking action. Because again, you can be aware, you can admit, but if you don't take action, nothing at all changes. So having that awareness that energy is going to fluctuate and be different depending upon where you're at, how you're feeling, your mood, life, circumstances, that's really, really important. Another key component is going in, sitting with yourself, which is something we never, ever do. Meditation is something, I shouldn't say never. That's not correct to say that. A lot of us do, but for the most part, we're so busy in life, making sure that we are dotting the I's, crossing the T's, being there for everybody else, showing up at our best self, and just getting through the day in survival mode at some time that we forget to stop and check in and really ask ourselves, what is my energy? Where am I at? Where am I operating and functioning at? And when we stop and pause and just sit with it and allow ourselves to feel, connecting with your heart space, your heart chakra, which is all the way through right here. This is your center. This is the hub of your body. And when you just drop into that, and even as I say that, I have goosebumps moving through my entire body. But just putting your hand over your heart and connecting with it and closing your eyes and just asking, what am I feeling in my body right now? Just ask that question. And we get impatient because we want the answer right now, or we don't think that we have the capability of bringing the answer forward. We all are intuitive. We all have intuition. My level of intuition as a healer goes deeper because that's my calling. I'm supposed to get messages from guides, from spirit, from past loved ones to heal you, to help you. We all have the intuitive ability to be able to connect and just say, what is that energy? What's that emotion? What am I feeling? And then asking yourself as you pause, where do I feel it in my body? Like right now, I feel a little bit of nervousness in my belly, right? I feel it there and I can feel it. So what does that feel like? Well, it feels like this blob and it brings the color orange for whatever reason. And then asking it, like, this is the most powerful part. And it always brings emotion to me that we have this power, is to be able to say, what do you need me to know? This nervousness, what do you need me to know? And right away, what comes to me, and this takes time to practice this, is you're afraid of sounding stupid on this interview podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I don't know if that answers your question, Michael. I think I really, really went above and beyond what you're asking, but I hope that helps. And if not, let me know what you want me to expand on.
Well, let me give you some advice before we kind of go real deep into the conversation today. There are no questions. This is a conversation between you and me. And I always tell guests, like when they ask that, if you give me an answer that is not what I was looking for, I run with it. I say, okay, this is where we're going today, right? So the way I do the podcast is different paths, because in life, there's different paths also. We can be a doctor. We could be a firefighter. We could be a police officer. We can be a garbage man, right? Like there's different paths to careers in a sense, right? But then again, there's different lives for soulmates, right? You could date a Spanish girl or a Spanish guy then you could, go learn salsa dancing or something. Or maybe you are going to date someone who's Italian. Then you can have Italian food and go to Italy and drink wine. I mean, there's different paths to life, right? So I always love the nuance of a new conversation, because no conversation is going to be exactly the same. You can talk to someone for 50 years and every single day you can find something new to talk about. If you find yourself in the same conversations, then you're talking to the wrong people, I believe. But, you are 100% correct. Many people are living in a 3D consciousness where they're thinking about the universe that's happening to them, kind of like our journey, right? The aspect of our journey, right? They think their journey is just, something that they were allotted. They're like, okay, this is my deck of cards and I'm going to be this and I'm going to do that. My father is this. My mother is this. I must be that too. But life is so much more than that, right? There's endless possibilities. And you brought up the idea of never. And sometimes people get close to it. I will say people get close to never, not doing things. But we can always instill our mind with something more positive. And you said something truly profound, I believe, when you said marker of knowledge. And so that would be something I would like to have an expansion on, because what is a marker of knowledge? And is it a marker of knowledge or a marker of wisdom?
I like that. I like that you asked that. Honestly, I think if you put it in that perspective, it's a marker of wisdom, because everything that you need to know, everything you need for any transformation or any life shift is already within you. It's already there. It's already in your future, right? And so a marker of wisdom is really tapping in and going in and listening to yourself and getting guidance from your higher self, because your higher self is there. She or he is with you always. You are never alone. And so on those moments where you are feeling so lonely, know that you are not alone. You have a very beautiful, handsome, gorgeous, wise, profound individual with you at all times that is guiding you. And that marker of wisdom is allowing yourself to tap into your inner being to guide you, to ask for that guidance you need. And what I really work so hard is getting us away from that external validation. And when we use marker of wisdom or marker of knowledge, however you want to look, I think each person, what's coming to me is some will call it marker of knowledge and some, because they're not ready to say marker of wisdom. They don't feel wise enough. So some have to embrace marker of knowledge. So for your listeners that are at the knowledge point, that's perfect. Embrace that, use that, say that. Wisdom, great. Embrace that, use that, do that. But when we no longer go out and expect somebody else to give us the validation that we need, and we use that marker of wisdom of going in and asking ourselves for that guidance, that's where we begin to tap into our internal validation. That is the most powerful advice, wisdom, guidance you can get anywhere. When you start listening to yourself and trusting yourself and going in and asking yourself the questions first before you start seeking advice outside. This is when we are constantly in external validation. This is where we're constantly asking permission to be who we want to be. That causes us to lose our authenticity and no longer be showing up, because we've asked guy A, gal B, C, D, and we've went down the line of people of who do you think I am? Who do you think I should be? Is this the right way to be? Do you like this? Do you think this is good? Do I look good here? We've now disconnected from listening to ourselves, and we're no longer getting that internal wisdom because we pulled it from everywhere else, and that causes us to lose our authenticity.
Very true. I know it happens quite a bit with teenagers when they're trying to fit in with their peers, because peer acceptance is so huge with them, right? They just want to be accepted. They want to be known, because at that age they're separating from their parents and they're trying to, find their own clique and their own crowd. And sometimes the crowds that they surround themselves with are very positive and they're good and they're beneficial. But then sometimes they give you a lot of things that are going to be limiting beliefs and things that are not going to serve you. And at some point in life, you have to relinquish them. That's why sometimes when you're all done with high school and you go off to college, you don't talk to your high school friends anymore. It's not that you don't love them and you don't care for them. It's just that you understand that that was one part of your life. And now you're stepping into a new part, your true self, in a sense, your identity, right? Who you're trying to become, the authentic version of yourself. It's not so much of the makeup and the facades and the hanging out in the chat rooms anymore. It's what meaning and what would I like to instill in life and in the world. And I wanted to, not expand, but if you can give us an example of a person who's operating in their lower self versus a person who's operating in their higher self. And then if there's pros and cons for either or, because I'm not sure if there's going to be a pro for operating in your lower self, right? Or if there's a con for operating in your higher self, right? So basically just to kind of tell the audience at least, so because maybe they don't even know that they're operating in their lower self because they just are so familiar with it, right? You might be in a terrible relationship. This is just an example. You can be in a terrible relationship and you say, this is love, but it's not, right? So a person might just be operating on what they know rather than, an expanded bit of knowledge and wisdom. So if you could, helping us understand the difference in if someone's in a lower self versus a higher self.
In saying that we don't realize that we're there, because that's what we know. That's our comfort zone. That's our safety net. Right. And so when you're in that lower, I don't believe that there's ever pros to being in that lower space. I honestly don't. And I don't think that there's cons to being in your higher level of energy and operation either. I don't think that there's any cons there. I think it's only pros. I do feel that we will be in a higher level of vibration energetically and we'll drop ourselves to the low because we have this limiting belief that we have to protect ourselves, that a common reason that we will not want to be in a higher level of vibration is maybe fear of success. If we start to feel successful, we'll drop ourselves to the lower, or if we're afraid of being seen. If we have the limiting belief, it's not safe for me to be seen, it's not safe for my voice to be heard. Any of those moments will take us from a higher level of vibration and drop us down to a low. Common to when you're in that lower level of energetic vibration, a common feeling is something's missing. Something feels off. I love to look at it this way. You're on the radio and you just hit like scanning to find a new station because you're driving, you don't have time to look at it, you're impatient. So you hit that button and it stops in between the radio station. So you can hear the radio broadcaster, but then all of a sudden there's like some noise and it's canceling out. And then the guy's back or the gal's back and then it's back out. That's being in your low vibration. You are constantly kind of in and out, being blocked. One day you feel like, oh, I think nope, not figuring it out. You're always in the state of uncertainty, of in between, not really sure. For years, I said this, and I'll never forget. I'll share the story. I was on the deck out front here at home talking to one of my friends, and I said, I feel like something is missing from my life, and I keep feeling this. And I don't know what it is. I can't figure it out. I'm just wondering, when am I going to ever do anything that's like a big accomplishment? When am I going to accomplish anything? And I'll never forget her saying, Tara, are you kidding me? I said, no, I'm not. She said, what do you mean? When are you going to accomplish something? You've lost 220 pounds. You've opened a brick and mortar gym that's changing lives. You have taken first place in bodybuilding competitions after being 338 pounds and you're ripped with muscle now. You've launched and sold a business and you've now launched a second business. What do you mean? When are you going to do something successful? That's being in low vibration, that energy. You cannot see the accomplishments that you've done. You're always in that lack mentality. And what you think about, you bring about. So you're continuing to think and bring in more of what you don't want. So that's I think the best example of what I can give of being in that low vibration. When you're in the high vibration, you are in the constant state of knowing that whatever you want is yours. You're leading yourself with confidence. Your posture is different. You're speaking from words of authenticity. You're not asking others who you should be, how you should be, showing up. You don't doubt yourself. You know that what you have to say matters, and you know that what you have to say has value to it, and that you as a person is valuable. And you wake up every single day being excited to live your life, knowing that whatever lays out in front of you is part of your experience. And I believe that we move from right and wrong to on path and off path. And I love sharing this because this is a new way of thinking when you're at that higher level of vibration and frequency. It's not right or wrong anymore. Oh, I did this wrong, or I was bad, or I was good. The experience is all about being on path, off path. So if you're on path, you're on the path authentically where you're supposed to be going. And then sometimes we get pulled off path for whatever reason. You know, Aunt Louise made us upset at the Thanksgiving dinner and now we're off path.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not quite vibrating at that right level. But we know we're off path and we are seeking within ourselves to get those wisdom markers, those knowledge markers to know what's going to bring me back on path. That's high vibration. Always knowing where you're at, how you're functioning, what you're thinking, and why you're in the space that you're in, and how to bring you back on path so that you're back into your authentic space.
As I was listening, the lower and the higher self, I couldn't agree more with everything you said. But then I was also thinking, is there a middle ground, like a neutral self, where someone is stuck in their homeostasis, where they're not paying attention to things, right? They're not having that conversation on the back deck saying, is there more to life, right? Or I feel stuck, or, something is missing. It's more of, okay, I'm going to go to work, another Monday, another Friday. And it's almost like they're not thinking of anything in the past or anything in the future. They're just like in this place of purgatory, and they're not like giving themselves anything. So is this a neutral state? Is this a homeostasis state where the body and the mind just kind of find complacency and they stay there, where they don't see things as could be better or could be worse?
Yeah. I call it mid-range. That's
mid-range.
Just where we're at, mid-range. And we spend a lot of time there. Honestly, I feel like we spend the vast majority of our life in the mid-range if we're not aware. We talk about self-growth and self-development and constantly being in the state of growth. Jim Rohn says that if you're not growing, you're dying. So he's always encouraging you to get out of your comfort zone. So when we're in our comfort zone, we're in mid-range. That's where we just let things slide. You'll hear commonly the words, this is the way it's always been. This is all I know. This is as good as it gets. I don't know anything different than this. Those are common statements. That means you're in mid-range. You're just letting it be. You're not happy. You're not miserable. You know that you would like better, but you just really don't care to try because you don't think it's going to work either. So let's just stay where we're at, right? That's mid-range. That's where you're at in mid-range.
Mm. So if so many people are stuck in the mid-range and they kind of find that comfortable complacency that we all are familiar with, right? We love to be there. It's like the brain loves to conserve energy when it can go to the gym, when it can go do something fun, but it would rather be on the smartphone or would rather be sitting on the sofa. And for me, like I like doing stuff. Like I go to the gym a lot and I love going to the gym. I like playing with my kids. It's fun. But then there's just some people who just kind of vegetate and they're just like, I don't look at them to say like, you poor fool, you're missing out on life. Like who am I to feel so empowered over someone, right? Everyone gets to choose to live their life, but there has to be a meaning, right? There has to be something more, the benefit to getting out of that mid-range and stepping into the higher self. What would that benefit be for people initially? What would they feel?
But when they first come to me, I have to unravel them from why they came to me looking to create a change. Because we as humans usually do it for one of two reasons: to be better liked and to fit in or not be abandoned or rejected, right? They kind of sound like both the same, but they are different. You can be with somebody that you know will never reject you and abandon you, but you just wish that they would treat you a little bit better. Or you're with people that do not accept you. They don't want you in their space. And so you're trying to change yourself in order to allow yourself to be in a constant state of acceptance. And so when they come to me, we're going to unravel them from that belief of why are they there to begin with. So for me, to answer that question is absolutely connecting them to their why. And anybody can do this. This is so powerful to do. It's called 7 layers deep. And you actually write the very first thing of why you want to lose weight. I want to lose weight because I want to feel better. Great. Why is it important for me to feel better? It's important for me to feel better because I want to have more energy. Why is it important for you to have more energy? It's important for me to have more energy so that I can do more around the house. Why is it important for you to do more around the house? And as you go deeper, sometimes you have to go deeper than the 7 layers, but oftentimes 7 tends to be that sweet spot. You hit your why, your deep, non-negotiable why of why it's so important for you to get out of that mid-range and choose to go to that higher level of frequency. That doesn't mean that you won't sometimes have to take a vacation from the high frequency and put yourself back in the mid-range. There is that time where you do have to pull back the reins a little bit, take a little bit of a break, allow yourself to just soar for a little bit, right? Or just float down the river a little bit. But it's important to always make sure that we don't take up real estate there. That's something that we do. And I love that analogy because it really connects it with when you take up real estate, you're planning to live in this house for 30, 40, 50, 60 years sometimes. So rather than choosing to take up real estate, know that I'm just going to pull back a little bit. I'm going to allow myself a break. But this is not a moment of real estate. This is just a short-term rental moment. And then I'm going to get back into the saddle and start moving forward. Run into my why of why it's important for me to be on this journey.
Going back to what you said early on, the awareness aspect. I mean, it has to be huge to even want to go through these 7 layers, because when it comes to change, when it comes to people, most people just kind of stay where they are unless something happens to them. People don't typically change because, oh yeah, you know what? It's Tuesday, this could be a perfect day to change. Typically something bad happens in their life, right? They get a doctor's note. It could be a moment of loss, grief, along those lines. People change at something bad. They got fired, right? I need to figure out my career. They just, came out with an email saying they're going to be doing layoffs in 3 months, right? Let me figure out what I need to do. So most people don't necessarily take action until they're forced to take action. And I always say, like when it comes to success, right? everyone can get success and reach happiness and fulfillment. But many people, they won't just drive there and get to there by themselves. It's almost like they have to be pushed off the cliff to say, hey, let's do this, let's fly. And I think of the story, I'm sure you're familiar with, this is like a little analogy of a young man. He wanted to be successful like this business guy, right? So the business guy says, okay, if you want to be successful, okay, meet me at the beach, 5 o'clock in the morning, right? So the young man goes to the beach and he's dressed in suit and tie. And the young man is kind of, just in shorts and a t-shirt. And he's like, hey, do you want to be successful? And the young man's like, yes. Okay. He's like, well, let's start walking into the water. Well, he started walking into the water and, knee deep. And then the kid is wondering like, hey, what are we doing? He's like, hey, do you want to be successful? And the kid, replies again, yes, I do want to be successful. So then now he's waist deep, and then chest deep, and then shoulder deep. And then, he's not, and he's like, this is crazy. What are we doing here? And then the business guy is like, I thought you wanted to be successful. And then the kid is like, I do want to be successful, but I don't want to, get wet. So the businessman starts drowning the kid, right? And now he's fighting for air. He's like, oh man, like what's going on? And then he lets the kid up, and then he says to the kid, when you want to be successful, or when you want to, I'm gonna edit that out. When you want to, what's the thing? Okay. When you want success, it's the same as if you wanted that breath. As you were fighting for that breath right there, that's how bad you have to want success. And so now it was like an eye-opening experience for him. It's like, I thought I wanted it, right? But it wasn't until I was fighting for that breath, right? Because we don't necessarily know what we want until we have to fight for it, right? When it's life or death, because the brain, again, it loves to conserve energy, but it will fight or flight, right? Many people will run away. But for the people who truly want to fight for something more in life, they'll give everything they have. And so, my question to you is, how can we get to that part or that point in life where we fight to get what we would like in life? How we can fight to get the energy that's going to get us up in the morning at 4 o'clock in the morning to maybe go to the gym and lose weight, maybe to send emails or do cold calls or to start a business to get us going, because it seems like many people are on the sidelines waiting for something good to happen. But, we are not bench warmers in life, right? We are going to be the main team that goes out and wins the trophy and, wins the championship. But we have to have we have to give ourselves that mentality. What is that mentality, and how can people start to get into it?
When I first started as a weight loss coach about a little over 11 years ago, and men would come to me and say, how'd you lose 220 pounds? What'd you do? And I never knew how to answer that question because I just did it. I just chose to do it. I just chose that it was time to make that decision and to do something different than I'd done before in all the other times. And I connected the dots through the years of how did I really do it? I stopped taking the shortcut. I stopped trying to find the easy button. I stopped trying to wait for somebody to save me. That's where I think it shifts. When you no longer are looking for permission and you're no longer waiting to be saved, and you decide to be your own savior in this life, and you decide the life you want. You decide that you're going to create your life. When you realize that you're here, and whatever is placed upon your heart, whatever thoughts, whatever feelings, whatever emotions come to you, they're not there by coincidence or accident. They're there because they're placed on your heart and in your soul for a reason, because they're part of your journey. They're part of your path. They're part of what you're supposed to experience in this life. Nothing comes to you accidentally. Even those chapters of your life that you are on for 3 weeks and it's done, that's just because it was only supposed to be 3 weeks long. That's it. Nothing more. And when we allow ourselves to get and move and do and trust the process, then we start to realize that anything is possible for us, and we don't have to be a bench warmer. We don't have to sit on the couch and wait for somebody to give us the next permission slip that says it's your time now. And it was me realizing that I honestly believe this. And whoever God, the universe, the higher power, whoever you speak to, for me, it's all free. I believe that God made two people: the people that were unfortunate and the people that were very fortunate. And for most of my life, Up until I hit 30 years old, I thought I was created to be an unfortunate person that never got to have a good life, that always had to experience misery, loss, lack. That was my belief system of where I functioned. And it was a mentor that came into my life on my 30th birthday, literally my 30th birthday, that taught me that anything was possible. We went on a business trip and he got a taxi. And the very first taxi was a very, very scary taxi. I am surprised that we got out of that taxi unharmed. I was so scared. And thank goodness he was 6'8" and could protect my 5'3" self. And then the next taxi was this amazing, like limo style cushioned water snack limo. It was incredible. And I wasn't connecting the dots of what he was trying to get me to connect with. And we're sitting down for the evening dinner before we called the day and went to our hotel rooms. And he said, Tara, you're living the life of that first taxi and you don't realize it. That taxi scared you. You were so afraid of what was going to happen in that taxi and if you're going to come out alive. But every day, that's a life you're living. Why are you not afraid if you're going to come out of that life that you're living? Why are you not afraid of what you're creating and what you're not doing? Like, why are you not afraid of that? He said that the other taxi, you were uncomfortable in that one and you were exhilarated at the same time. What you don't realize is that taxi is yours. You can create that for yourself. But if you're waiting for somebody to drive up and open the door and invite you into that life, it's never going to happen. You have to choose to create it. That was a moment that changed everything for me. I had lost 100 pounds at that point by doing really unwise choices. On starvation, deprivation, eating disorders, doctor prescribed, internet suggested, friend recommended. Everything I was doing was damaging my health overall. And it was that conversation with him that made me realize that I was waiting for the next easy button. And I decided what my taxi was going to look like. I decided to be the author of my life and go to work being in constant creation of what I want it to be. And that doesn't mean that I've not had hardships and struggles and that I've not gotten off path and lost my footing and lost my way, because I have a lot. But that time of being off path has always been shorter because I get back on path.
Very true. And today you are that mentor for many individuals who are looking for a change, who are looking for something different, right? They're tired of living the life that they are currently living. They don't want to accept it anymore. And definitely our conversation today is one of an awareness conversation where people are starting to look at their life, not for, to compare, like I don't want people to say, well, they have more than me or they have less than me. It's what is allotted for you is literally what you're willing to go for. So if you're willing to go to the moon, you're going to make it there. If you're willing just to go for the sky, you're not going to, break through the earth atmosphere, right? You are going to stay exactly where you are. Most people, they stay stuck within the four walls of their home and they say, this is my life. So they don't even reach for the stars or the sky or the moon or wherever else they want to go in the universe. They just kind of stay in their bubble. But when someone can make it so crystal clear as you did today, just from our conversation, that there is just so much out there for you. There's so much that you can do and accomplish. And the life that you're currently living, if you're not like living in like this exuberance of happiness and fulfillment, then something can change, right? There's room for improvement. I always say when you're drawing something, right? Like you're an artist, typically there's always room for something more. Right. You might say, well, I covered all the white canvas, right? Like there's no more space. Well, guess what? Bob Ross would disagree. He would say you could put a tree here. You could put a mountain here. Look, a river can flow right here. There is so much more to life. And you just have to be able to see it. And I just love the aspect of coaches and mentors and guides, because they basically can say, I can see where you want to go. Right. Right. I can see your blind spots. All right, let's work together. And it's so powerful when you find someone who has a passion and a care and, a knack for, leading people and guiding people onto the path of, I don't want to say righteousness, but of a, the idea of, your journey is going to be yours, and it can go to whichever extent you want. You can go on a little hill, or you can go to the highest points in life, or Mount Everest if you wanted to stop there, but it doesn't have to be there, right? I always say you have a goal behind a goal. Maybe your goal today is to lose some weight. Maybe your goal today is to get a different job, right? Maybe to become financially fit, abundant, maybe to retire early, whatever your goal is. Even when you reach that goal, there's another goal behind it. Whether you like it or not, there's always going to be meaning, right? And that's what life is. It's full of meaning. And there's not just one point we get to and say, okay, everything is perfect. Everything is right. We adjust, we fix, right? I use the analogy of when you get an apartment, right? Maybe you don't have much. You have a bed, you got a couple of dishes, maybe a sofa. And as you start to live in your apartment, you start to get little things, maybe a table, maybe, some teddy bears or a coffee table, right? But then let's say you move from your apartment, right? It's life now, right? The idea of life. We're moving up. Now we have a house, right? We have a two bed or 3 bed, 2 bath house, right? Well, guess what? All the furniture we have had in the apartment, it's going to fit in that house perfectly, but there's so much room left, right? So now what do? We start to say, well, we need something in this corner, get some house plants. Let's do this over here. We need a little ottoman. And before you know, that house is full. But then you say, well, this is nice and everything, but you get a mansion. And I'm not saying that you have to you can't live in an apartment, you can't live in a house, you have to live in a mansion. This is just the idea of life, how if the more you grow, the more you expand, the more room you have for things. And so the conversation is that, right? There's so much more room for you to expand. Your reach is as far as you want to go, right? It's not just where you think you can go, where you think you can reach, right? I can touch his notebook, I can touch his pen, but it's so much more than that, right? The conversation today, the reach is not just your ears. It's going to be all the people that you impact also, right? Their ripple effect is already taking place, right? The idea is in your head, and the time is nigh. It's now, right? We have to take action today. So, Tara, if you could, please share with us some final words, and then please tell the audience where they can find you, reach out to you, and begin working with you.
Absolutely. And thank you for all your words. I love how you use analogies and you really paint a picture, because that visually is what we need without realizing it. That visual connects to our heart and brings us into the emotion. And I think that's the most important thing that changes everything, is feeling that emotion of what you want rather than what you're scared of. For final words, I feel like it's so important that we really start to ask ourselves what it is that we want. That's a journey of healing, of becoming aware of who you are, what you want, setting time for yourself. It breaks my heart so often when I watch women, and I was one of these women, and this happens with men too. It's men and women across the board, where we limit ourselves. We limit our ability to be who we want to be because we have these limiting beliefs that are holding us back. And these limiting beliefs are beliefs that we choose to be real for us or true for us. If you believe in past lives passed down generationally, it can come from the time that you're in the womb, during your birth, in your imprinting phase of 0 to 7 years old, becoming aware of those limiting beliefs. That we can release those in the work that I do, but you don't have to wait for those moments. It's tapping in to know the emotion or a word that you're constantly saying. And if you were to say, I'm just not good enough, I'd really like to climb Mount Everest, but I'm not very good at things like that. The underlying, that's an unhelpful thought that goes with the belief, I'm not good enough. Let's reframe that. What would you rather believe? Start shifting your thinking, start shifting your language. Instead of saying what's keeping you playing small, ask yourself, what would I say if I was the woman, if I was the man that climbed Mount Everest with all the confidence, and I climbed it, and then I climbed it again, and then I did it again? What would I say to myself in that version versus what I'm saying right now? It's that simple shift. It's that simple shift of becoming aware of the things that we're saying to ourselves that are keeping us playing small, and start asking ourselves, to become who I want to become, what do I have to say differently? What do I have to think differently and do differently and dress differently? We making those changes starts allowing us to show up in a different way, and it allows us to start to emerge of how we want to feel, what's important to us. We begin to really get to connect and know ourselves. So that would be my last piece of advice that I would give if I had to choose one, because we could be here all night if I chose more. And where can you find me? So I'm on the social media, Facebook and Instagram. Those are my two sweet spots of where I enjoy to be. Facebook is Tara Wiskow. Instagram's very confused on my platform, my profile of Tara Wiskow. So I had to give it a break, and it's Tara.Wiskow, the period in between. That's where you'll find me on Instagram. And I also have my own podcast, Be the Change You Need. That is on Apple or Spotify. Those would be the two places that you can find me to connect.
Perfect. And I will make it easy for everyone. All the links are right down below. So everyone check out her social medias, of course. Follow, like, subscribe, do all those things. Check out her podcast. Always a wonderful thing for me to get another podcast host, because you can tell. Because the conversation is just so sweet. It's like, whoa, this is a good conversation. Like, I just can't wait for this to come out, because it's so powerful. And, the work that you do is powerful, helping people change where they are. And so, we talked about so many things. There's so many golden nuggets in here. So if people just take away just half of what we talked about, they're going to be in a better place tomorrow. So, take action, right? Create the awareness, admit where you are. And just, the action part is the final piece of the puzzle. But it's always nice to listen to, a podcast and say you're going to do it. But are you, right? Let's get into the action part more, right? Whether it just be a friend invite, whether it be an email, a message on social media platforms, booking a consultation, those little things, it might seem scary in the beginning, but they say at the precipice of change, right? You're going to be faced with an immense amount of fear. And that is when you jump. So jump into the life that you can live, jump into the wonders and the beauty of what the world has for you. And Tara, I do want to thank you for coming on, spending some time talking about your work and just helping people, reach new heights in life.
Thank you. Blessing me with this opportunity to be here with you and having this conversation. And I really have enjoyed it. I enjoy being here, and I hope that everyone that's listening takes something huge away, not just from what I've said. You've had some very profound, compelling things of advice as well that have complemented what I've said. So together, we've definitely made a shift that's going to make some changes for people. So thank you again for this time.